Top 10 Haunting Facts Surrounding the U.S.-Mexico Border. The most frequently crossed international border in the world is between the United States and Mexico, with approximately 350 million legal crossings annually. Suffice it to say, the border, which spans nearly 3,200 kilometers, 2,000 miles, has witnessed its share of unscrupulous characters. 10. False sense of security. In November 2014, members of U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) testified before a Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee about the largest Ebola epidemic in history. To minimize the introduction and spread of communicable and deadly diseases, the CBP conducted enhanced Ebola screenings at 5 major U.S. airports. Despite drastic but necessary measures, Washington's governance failed to address the demands of essential border examinations required to halt a growing plague at the southern frontier. According to current White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, a retired Marine Corps general, and former SOUTHCOM commander, President Barack Obama's White House ignored the potential danger of immigrants infected with Ebola entering via the southern border. 9. Lightning. In 2006, Border Patrol agent Bradford Rubinoff was responding to a car accident near the Mexico border when he and his partner were abruptly launched several feet into the air. When I came back on the ground, I felt this intense heat and pain throughout the core of my body, Rubinoff explained. The 2 officers had been struck by lightning, a common occurrence in southern Arizona during monsoon season. 1 year later, several more agents were struck near Nogales, in addition to 2 Mexican nationals who were hospitalized after illegally entering the United States near Sonoyta, Arizona. In the same vicinity 3 years later, 17-year-old Fernan Cortez Aguilar of Hidalgo, Mexico, was found dead by Border Patrol after he was struck and killed by a bolt of lightning when an intense storm blew through the region. 8. Contraband. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that border agents are allowed to conduct body cavity searches without a warrant if there is reasonable suspicion of contraband. Such a nebulous ruling, however, has led to numerous lawsuits against CBP within the last decade. Case in point, in October 2014, 19-year-old U.S. citizen Ashley Cervantes was returning to Nogales, Arizona, on foot through a port of entry when she was confronted by officers who accused her of carrying drugs. Over the next 7 hours, Cervantes was handcuffed to a chair, checked by drug-sniffing dogs, and ordered to undress and squat to be visually inspected by an investigator. When no drugs were discovered, Cervantes was transported to Holy Cross Hospital, where the unwarranted treasure hunt continued, with a male physician forcefully and digitally probing Ashley's vagina and anus. 7. Ghostly sightings. While chasing a group of illegal immigrants near the Lower Otay Reservoir in 1995, Border Patrol agent Luis Santiago slipped off a cliff, falling 37 meters, 120 feet, to his death. The agent had earned a reputation for tracking down drug smugglers. This prompted many to believe that he was murdered and that his troubled spirit continues to haunt the mountainous region to seek revenge. Despite the absurdity of such claims, countless sightings of Santiago's ghost have supposedly been substantiated by fellow Border Patrol agent Rocky Elmore. In his book, Out on Foot, Elmore recounts other eerie events throughout his years patrolling the Otay Mountains. In March 1991, 2 pilots and 8 members of Reba McEntire's band were killed when their airplane crashed late at night. This fueled more accounts of paranormal activity along the border. According to locals, it is commonplace to see shadows dancing across headlights and hear the echoing whispers of a foreign tongue over the hill, or the sounds of mesquite branches breaking in the night. All can be attributed to illegals crossing the terrain despite the lack of human presence during such inexplicable occurrences. 6. The Devil's Highway. Crossing the border illegally becomes increasingly difficult with each passing year due to new and improved technology. In an effort to evade Border Patrol, would-be migrants find themselves further out in the Sonoran Desert, away from towns commonly patrolled by agents. Although there is a reduced presence of Border Patrol, the dreadful dangers of the desert increase dramatically. One route, in particular, El Camino del Diablo, The Devil's Highway is known as being the deadliest migrant trail in North America. Located in southwestern Arizona between Tucson and Yuma, the Devil's Highway has claimed the lives of more than 1,400 migrants within the last 5 years. If these individuals are fortunate enough to survive exposure to the elements as well as incapacitating thirst and heat exhaustion, they face the perils of unforgiving wildlife such as rattlesnakes, Gila monsters, scorpions, mountain lions, and bobcats. 5. Corruption. To tighten U.S.-Mexican border security in the early 2000s, the Border Patrol sought to increase its force from 11,700 agents to 18,000 by 2008. Unfortunately, while the number of officers grew, so did corruption cases within the department. One agent, in particular, Oscar Antonio Ortiz, demonstrated the absurd incompetence of the agency's hiring process after it was discovered that he was an undocumented immigrant who had been patrolling the border for 3 years. To make matters worse, Ortiz, who was described as a distinguished officer, admitted to smuggling over 100 illegal immigrants into the U.S. via his government-issued Border Patrol truck. This is just one instance of a growing number of unprecedented crimes that CBP has encountered among its workforce. In 2006 alone, over 25 agents assigned to the border were arrested, with 8 convicted in a federal court. 4. Coyotes. Prior to 2004, the charming occupation of human smuggling was primarily left up to large families living near border towns. Throughout the last decade, however, drug cartels have taken over, causing the loss of human life to increase substantially. An average of 207 undocumented border deaths occurs every year. Nonetheless, such a number is merely an estimate considering the number of unknown bodies yet to be discovered, if at all. Cadavers not washed away by monsoon floods or eroded by the blistering rays of the sun are commonly found in a mummified state where they had sought refuge within the crevices of arroyos or the shade of a tree. More often than not, those who choose to cross the border are unknowingly signing their own death warrants given that their coyote, human smuggler, has no intention of seeing them through the treacherous journey. In such cases, they are abandoned and left to die in the desert without water. 3. Mass graves. The northeastern part of Brooks County sits on one of the busiest checkpoints in Texas. With more than 10,000 vehicles passing through the vicinity every day, few would have imagined the grisly discovery in a remote town cemetery, Sacred Heart Burial Park. In 2014, a team of archaeologists uncovered mass graves containing the bodies of countless immigrants. Their remains were buried inside trash bags, biohazard bags, shopping bags, or nothing at all, piled one on top of the other like a landfill of trash. Krista Latham, a forensic anthropologist with the University of Indianapolis, estimated that the burials occurred between 2005 and 2009. The majority of the dead bore no identification. Though it's uncertain how many cadavers were negligently disposed of in this way, it is believed that the burials were organized by local funeral home Funeraria del Angel Howard Williams. 2. Black magic and voodoo. While vacationing with friends during spring break in March 1989, college student Mark Kilroy was kidnapped and taken to a remote ranch near the U.S. border in Matamoros, Mexico. After hours of relentless torture, Kilroy's abductors decapitated the college student with a machete, ripped out his heart, and boiled his brains in a kettle. The horrific act was said to be part of superstitious rituals derived from Santeria, African voodoo, and ancient Aztec rites of human sacrifice. Kilroy was one of 12 people mutilated and murdered by the demented gang of drug traffickers who believed the horrific slayings would provide them with protection. They believed that human and animal sacrifices raised a magical shield to protect them from bullets and other evils. 1. Vigilantes. In October 2002, 12 illegal immigrants were waiting in the Arizona desert to be picked up by smugglers when 2 men abruptly appeared in camouflage fatigues. After descending on the group, the armed duo opened fire, riddling the crossers with bullets. According to migrants' rights activists, the killings were part of a growing vigilante campaign responsible for a series of murders along the southern border. Between June and September that year, 8 migrants were found gagged and handcuffed in the desert west of Phoenix. 7 of the men were shot in the back of the head while the 8th was stabbed to death. Due to the drastic rise of migrant murders along the border, many fear that large numbers of armed citizen border patrols, aka Minutemen, have produced a team of assassins. In April 2012, 4 white men wearing camouflage opened fire on a packed truck carrying immigrants near Elo, Arizona, killing 2. Matt Browning, a retired Arizona police detective, said, "What we do have is a lot of angry, militant white men on the border sitting like hunters waiting for these people to come across." Despite President George W. Bush condemning the group, which he characterized as vigilantes, local support continued to grow.